The storm didn't just fall, it attacked. Lightning carved the clouds in half, and thunder crushed the air so hard it rattled bones. Daniel fought the river's pull, boots sinking, arms useless against the surge. Somewhere in the black current, a child's cry flared, and was cut off. Shadow lunged, vanishing into the flood, a streak of muscle and instinct. When Daniel's beam caught him again, the K9 had teeth in a jacket sleeve, dragging someone out of the water before the storm could claim her name forever. The first strike came so close Daniel swore it cracked the air inside his chest. Lightning speared the church steeple at the heart of Miller's Creek, and the sound hit half a second later, thunder so violent it made the old riverbank shudder. The rain didn't fall in drops anymore, it came sideways, hammered into sheets, as if the sky had opened 1,000 fire hoses. He dragged his boots through shin-deep water that was climbing fast. Each surge brought tree branches, trash cans, and once, the pale shape of a porch chair sliding past like it wanted to find new owners. Shadow strained against the leash, his weight almost pulling Daniel off balance. The dog wasn't panicked, he was locked onto something invisible, the way only he could be. The scanner on Daniel's chest spat broken words, 9-year-old female, last seen near Miller Street Culvert, the rest was eaten by static. He didn't need the full sentence. He already knew who. Emily. He pictured her jacket, the cheap blue nylon with stars she'd worn at the community picnic last summer. He pictured her mother's face when the sirens went off and she realized the girl hadn't come home. Storms made maps out of people's fear, and Daniel knew exactly where that map pointed, the water. Always the water. Shadow suddenly barked, one explosive crack, and lunged left. Daniel followed, flashlight beam cutting through rain to catch the faintest flicker, something pale in the water, snagged against the roots of an oak that leaned over the bank like it was giving up. Emily! Daniel shouted. The pale shape shifted, then vanished, swept free by the current. Without thinking, Daniel unclipped Shadow's leash. Find her! The shepherd exploded forward, muscles bunching, a black streak swallowed by the current. Daniel splashed after, lungs burning, light whipping across water so thick with spray it looked like smoke. He caught a flash of blue fabric. Then nothing. The world narrowed to the sound of water in his own pulse. He thought of Afghanistan, flash floods rolling through wadis like monsters you couldn't shoot. He thought of the boy they hadn't reached in time. He thought, not again. Not tonight. Then lightning split the sky in a jagged white scar, and for 1 second the whole world lit up like a photograph. Daniel saw Shadow in mid-leap, jaws locked on a sodden jacket sleeve, his body hauling backward with every ounce of force. And clutched in that sleeve, small fingers, pale knuckles, alive. Water fought to keep its prize. Shadow's rear paws scrabbled against slick roots while his front end heaved backward, teeth locked on the jacket sleeve. Daniel plunged in up to his ribs and grabbed the girl beneath the arms. The current tried to fold them all into itself. He planted a knee against the root mass and made his body a hinge. Emily, I've got you, he said, pitching his voice low and ordinary, as if they were stepping off a curb, not clawing out of a river. On 3 we breathe. 1, 2, now. Her chest hitched, water burped out of her throat. She wasn't fully conscious, eyes open, unfocused, lashes clotted to her cheeks. Lightning fired again somewhere behind the clouds, turning the rain silver for a heartbeat. Daniel shifted his grip, slid his forearm under her back, and used the root as leverage to pivot her onto her side across his thigh. Shadow adjusted with him like they were trained from birth together, never pulling against Daniel's movement, only adding force where it mattered. A log slid past with a slow predator's patience and kissed Daniel's spine hard enough to spark stars. He grunted, rode the pain down, and shoved Emily higher onto the bank, up where the roots were a net instead of a slick wall. Her lips were blue with more than cold. He tilted her head, swept her mouth, compressed twice, opened again. Breath found breath. A ragged cough came up like a nailed board wrenching free. Good, he said. He kept talking, oxygen carried on words. Good, Em. That's the worst of it. He shrugged off his field jacket and wrapped it around her. The blue nylon under it was shredded down the sleeve where Shadow's grip had been, clean puncture marks, no tear through skin. Good boy, Daniel whispered, and the shepherd's chest heaved once in agreement before he turned back toward the Black River with his ears, as if the water might decide to argue again. A siren coughed somewhere downstream. Not close enough. The street above the bank was a mess of half-submerged cars and waving grass. Daniel scanned for a path that wouldn't drown them in the first 5 steps. The old maintenance stairs, concrete slabs half swallowed by soil, still bit into the slope 10 yards to the left. He slid Emily onto his hip, fingers locked under her knee, and rose. Shadow shouldered the current a half step ahead, carving a wake a man could believe in. At the second stair, Emily's hand twitched, then clutched Daniel's shirt. Mom, she rasped, voice like sand. Soon, he said. We're going to light and heat first. Then Mom. Dog, she managed. Daniel smiled without showing it to the storm. Shadow, he said. He's your lifeguard tonight. They crested onto asphalt that shimmered like a black tongue. Power was out, but lightning made its own cruel daylight every few breaths. The rain eased from hammer to drumroll. Daniel turned toward the single building he knew still had a generator, the volunteer firehouse at the end of Willow. If he could get her onto a cot, get warm air on her lungs, oxygen if they had it. The radio on his chest fizzed. Bridge, north span gone, divert to, static ate the rest. The north span was how the medic unit reached town from the highway. He felt the logistics map in his head redraw itself with a knife. Fine. So they would be the ambulance and the ER for a few more minutes. Shadow, he said, nodding toward Willow's rise. The dog trotted, then stopped dead, nose high. He pivoted in place and pointed, not with a paw but with his whole body, toward a row of houses on the low side, where water flowed like a black ribbon through yards. Daniel's beam followed. At the second porch, a light flickered, handheld, not electric. A woman's silhouette swam in the rain, one arm windmilling. Mom, Emily whispered, more breath than sound. Okay, Daniel said to both of them, and adjusted course. The first yard swallowed his boot to the ankle, the second tried for the knee. Shadow found the shallow lines like a tactician reading ground, over the flowerbed berm, past a mailbox sunk to its flag in water, between 2 cars nosed up onto the lawn. The woman on the porch ran down the steps without looking at her feet. Emily, she cried, half laugh, half sob, and then she saw Shadow and Daniel, and her face became a battleground of thanks and fear. Is she breathing? Daniel said. Cold. We need dry and warm now. Firehouse generators up. Can you ride? She nodded so hard it almost knocked her over. Mira, she said, as if names could lay planks over the flood. I'm Mira. Daniel, he said. This is Shadow. Thank you, she breathed to both. The words were a rope thrown across a distance no map could measure. Myra's front room looked like every emergency had ever happened there. Towels exploded from a closet, a pot steaming on the stove with water for tea and hot packs, candles trembling in mason jars. The power was out, but warmth had a way of pooling where mothers stood. Daniel laid Emily on the couch, elevated her feet, tucked his jacket tighter, and slipped a folded towel under her neck to open her airway. Do you have blankets, heavy ones? He asked. Mira moved before the words finished. Yes, 2. And the foil one from the car kit. Good. Daniel eyed the room's perimeter the way a medic does, a constant, silent audit. Windows intact. Back door wedged against a chair to keep it from banging open. A red first aid kit on the wall. A small oxygen tank in the corner from Myra's late father, gauge reading a Mercy quarter full. He turned it on low and bled a trickle through a mask. Emily coughed, then drew a steadier breath and blinked like she'd fallen back into her body. Cold? Mira asked. Emily's teeth clicked once. A little. We'll warm you from the core, Daniel said. He slid the foil blanket over the wool, tucked edges. Shadow will be a foot warmer. As if summoned by the title, the shepherd eased onto the rug near Emily's shins, not touching until she touched him first. Her fingers landed on the solid bridge of his head. Her breath smoothed by a fraction, then two. A crack echoed down the street, something big giving up. Daniel pictured the culvert gate at Miller Street, pictured pressure against rust and bolts that hadn't been inspected since a budget meeting no one attended. If that let go, the street out front would stop being a film of water and become a channel. Upstairs, he asked, scanning the ceiling joists, half hoping for the old-fashioned kind that loved to hold. Attic, Mira said, reading his mind. Pull-down ladder in the hall. Roof is pitched, my dad always said it sheds water like a duck. Good. He looked to the stove. Keep that pot simmering but not boiling. Steam helps. Do not light anything else if you smell sweet, propane sweet. I know the smell, she said, a flash of memory in her eyes. We're clear. The radio spat again, secondary surge, all low streets evacuate vertical, repeat, vertical. Vertical meant up. Vertical meant attics and roofs and flags made from shirts. Daniel moved to the front window. The glass trembled in its frame, not from wind but from the low bass note of water gaining mass. A mailbox across the way vanished into a sheet of black. He turned to Mira. We're going to the attic. Now. She nodded and scooped Emily, blankets and all, the way only a mother can lift, leveraged by bone-deep terror and a tenderness that can argue with gravity. Daniel grabbed the oxygen tank and the kettle, wrapped in towels. Shadow took point down the hall, as if he'd been raised in this house. The pull-down ladder complained but held. In the attic, heat hit first, stored summer trapped under the roof, now stirred by storm. Dust motes spun in their candlelight. A single dormer window looked down the pitch toward Willow and the town beyond. Daniel shoved a trunk under it and cracked the pane an inch to listen to the world. Water had its own language, tonight it spoke plural. He set the kettle near the opening so steam could curl into the space. Emily's color crept back toward human. Mira sat cross-legged beside her daughter and didn't stop touching her elbow, hair, cheek, socks, like she was counting, and if she got to 10, the storm would relent. A far siren rose, closer than before. Another answered. Boats, maybe. Or the old high-water truck the county pulled out when roads forgot their shape. Then Shadow stood. Not tense, alert. He faced the dormer, nostrils opening as if the air itself had words. He looked back at Daniel and did not whine. He didn't need to. Daniel moved to the window and peered through the rain. At the corner of Willow and 3rd, the culvert gate gave up its ghost. Water climbed the street like a creature finding its legs. It hit a parked sedan, turned it 90 degrees, and used it as a battering ram against a porch rail. In 2 minutes, the front walk was a black scene with a froth of white. Roof, Daniel said softly. We go higher. They climbed again. Daniel kicked the attic vent free with a heel and shouldered the panel until shingles groaned and gave. Rain punched his face, cold and stinging. He swept his light across the roofline, 3 points they could trust, ridge beam, chimney, dormer lip. He pulled his rescue line, looped it around the chimney base, and tested. Solid. Emily, listen, he said, crouched at eye level. We're going out, but the roof is safe if you move slow. Shadow will be right here. You follow my hand. You stop when I say stop. Ready? She nodded, eyes huge but steady. Mira tied the foil blanket like a cape. We're superheroes, she whispered. Emily cracked the smallest smile, then bit her lip and locked herself to her mother's side. They emerged into a world that looked carved from obsidian and lightning. Roofs became islands. Between them ran channels that had once been streets. 2 houses down, a man waved a phone like a torch. Across the block, a woman on a porch roof held a white sheet and flapped it in a precise rhythm, 2 long, 1 short. Someone taught her code once, and she remembered it when it mattered. Shadow settled 4 square near Emily, rope clipped to his harness, rope clipped to hers, a daisy chain of trust. Daniel took his own line and anchored all 3. He forced himself to skin not just the drama, people, waving, but also the deception, a ridge that looked sturdy but flexed, a tree limb that might let go, a line that might be live. Lightning fissured the sky again, followed by thunder that hit like a shrugging shoulder. In that harsh strobe, Daniel caught motion in the water below, a shape turning slowly, not debris. A door. A blue front door ripped from its hinges, surveyor's tape still tied to the knob, chemlight cracked and glowing like a drawn coin. He felt something irrational and sharp pass through his ribs. Doors meant home. Doors meant promise. And now the promise was floating past his knees. He shook off the thought and looked for boats. Red strobes moved between roofs, then stalled, then moved again, debris and current playing chess with holes. A spotlight found them, slid away, returned. A bullhorn's voice arrived in fragments, "Stay put, we see you, triaging." "Over here!" Mira shouted, cupping her hands. Her voice got swallowed and sent back, distorted. Emily lifted her small flashlight and drew a circle over their heads the way Daniel had taught her at the river, signal, not panic. "Good," Daniel said. "Keep that beam steady." Then Shadow's head snapped toward the next block. He emitted one short bark that was not alarm but assignment. Daniel followed his stare. On the gable of the house behind theirs, a figure crawled the wrong way, down toward the gutter instead of up. Even in this light, Daniel saw why. A toddler clung to a TV antenna like a baby sloth, screaming without sound, and the figure, teenager, maybe, was trying to scoop the child from below. Every motion threatened to lever them both into the water. Mira saw it in the same heartbeat. "Go," she said to Daniel, no tremor. "We're tied in. We'll stay." He measured distance, 15 feet of air, 10 feet of water, 1 spine of fence posts between. Crossable with a board. He ducked back into the attic, hauled out a closet door, and slammed it edge-on across the gutter gap. It bridged, bowed, didn't break. He clipped a spare line to the hinge into his harness and belly crawled, rain carving rivers down his sleeves. "Hey," he called to the teenager above the gutter. "Freeze. I'm coming." The boy looked up, eyes wild, hair pasted to his skull. He didn't move. Good. Daniel slid to the gutter's edge, looped the line around the antenna base, and reached up, palms open. "I've got him. Lift his feet to me." The toddler's fingers came loose by inches, peeled like sticker edges. Daniel got one arm under the small belly, tucked the child against his chest, and backed away in reverse, never lifting his head, never looking at the water. The boy stayed frozen until the child made a sound with breath in it, then he sobbed once, swallowed it, and crawled back up the roof as if ashamed of the noise. Back on their ridge, Daniel handed the child to Mira. She gathered him like he'd been hers since morning. Emily wrapped her foil cape around the boy's legs, serious as a medic. Shadow touched his nose to tiny toes, then went back to scanning the storm. The boat spotlight returned, fixed, and the bullhorn voice landed on them clearly at last. "Roof team, hold position. We're coming in." The rescue skiff nosed through a minefield of trash cans and picnic tables, spotlight trembling on rain needles. 2 firefighters leaned over the bow with poles, batting debris aside like hockey defensemen. The coxswain cut throttle near the gutter gap and used the pole to snug the bow against Daniel's closet door bridge. 2 adults, 2 kids, 1 dog, he shouted. 3 adults, Mira called, nodding toward the teen on the next roof. And yes, 1 dog. The firefighter's face did the quick math, the kind of operations people do when weight and time and risk live in the same column. He scanned Shadow, then Daniel. "Big boy," he said of the shepherd. "Can he ride?" "He can board," Daniel said. "And he'll hold." "Then we load small to big," the firefighter decided. "Kids first, then mom, then teen. Dog, then you." The choreography felt like a dance they'd rehearsed separately. Daniel ferried the toddler across the board to the boat hands. Emily followed on the line, knees shaking but steps precise, shadowed by Shadow's steady flank until the very last second, when he yielded the board to her with a little sidestep like a gentleman at a doorway. Mira came next, jaw set, one palm on Daniel's shoulder for balance, then the teen, hair in his eyes, refusing to cry where anyone could see. "Dog," the coxswain said, planting his feet. Shadow met Daniel's gaze, and in that split second Daniel saw the refusal. Not stubbornness, order of operations. Shadow flicked his head toward the black water beyond the boat and then back toward the attic hatch, an arrow of thought, "There's more." Daniel heard it before he argued it, a thin, mechanical cough under the storm's roar, like a machine failing. Oxygen. Anders. The old woman down the block who used a concentrator. He had switched her to a tank last time, a quarter full then. That would be gone by now. "Take them," Daniel told the firefighter, already unclipping the line from his harness and tying it to the chimney instead. "There's a medical on the way back. We'll flag you from the next roof." "Negative," the coxswain began, but Mira cut in hard. "He's right. House 2 doors south, the Anders place, blue door with tape on the knob." Her voice broke once on the word door and kept going. "She needs help." The coxswain swore quietly and made the call up the chain. The bullhorn answered from the dark, "Boat 2 divert to Anders. Boat 1 extract these 4 and return." "Dog?" the bowman asked again, softer. Daniel put a palm on Shadow's shoulder. "With me," he said. The shepherd settled beside him like an iron weight. The firefighter read the pair and didn't push it. "We'll be back," he said, meaning it like a vow carved into wet wood. The skiff took the kids and Mira into the night, red strobe cutting the rain like an artery of light. Emily's face hovered pale in the stern for a second. She lifted 2 fingers in a tiny salute at Shadow. The shepherd didn't take his eyes off the water. "Okay," Daniel said to the roof, to the storm, to the dog. "We go south." He reset the door bridge and belly slid to the teen. "You good?" The kid nodded, which meant no, but also yes. "Jay," he said, "because names are planks. My grandma's in Anders Bible Circle. I can show the way." "Show me from here," Daniel said. "You stay tied. Shadow and I will move." Jay pointed along ridge lines like a scout. "Hop that gutter. 3 houses. Blue door. She keeps cookies in a tin with ducks." "Perfect," Daniel said, as if that were the key to the city. They moved. Shadow took the rope, Daniel followed the leash of his certainty, over one ridge, down to a valley, across another closet door. The blue door, ripped earlier, had drifted against a fence and lodged like a talisman. Its chemlight still glowed in a weak emerald. The house behind it had a porch underwater to the second step and a window whose shade pulsed blue with firefighter strobes in the distance. "Inside and up," Daniel said. He kicked the window once at the lock, twice for emphasis. It gave. They slid in with the river at their heels. The Anders house leaned like an exhausted giant, but it hadn't broken. Daniel shoved the window up and slid inside with Shadow close behind. The living room floated in waist-deep water, armchairs half-submerged like drowned thrones. A family photo frame clung to the wall, stubborn in its crooked nail. "Ms. Anders?" Daniel called. His beam cut through the damp. A cough answered, faint but deliberate. He followed it to the bedroom, chest clenching. The old woman lay tilted on her bed, pillow soaked halfway, oxygen tubing limp. Her hands fluttered once in the air, then dropped back, too heavy. Shadow leapt onto the bed without hesitation, nose to her face, then back to Daniel with a sharp huff. Move. Daniel spun the tank valve. Empty. Gauge pinned left. His jaw clenched. He ripped open his pack for the spare regulator he'd carried since Afghanistan, not standard issue for floods, but he'd never stopped carrying it. He grabbed the quarter-tank Mira had flagged earlier in the living room corner, swapped hoses, twisted the valve, heard the hiss like the world forgiving one mistake. Ms. Anderson hailed, shallow but real. Her eyes open halfway. Knew someone would come. You're not done yet, Daniel told her. We're taking you up. He looped the oxygen tank into his rope rig, then scooped her into a fireman's cradle. She weighed no more than a child, bones bird-light but wrapped in stubbornness. Shadow bounded ahead, claws clicking attic rungs. Daniel hauled her up step by step, breath hitching, muscles burning, until they reached the attic's dry air. Outside, the storm muttered threats, but the roof still held. And the blue door, the one the flood had ripped away, bumped gently against the gutter below, its chem light glowing weak but steady, as if even doors refused to abandon their people. They barely cleared the roof when the second surge arrived. It wasn't a wall, it was a rising, endless swell that climbed steps, porches, windows, swallowing air like a thief. Across the street, a whole shed detached and floated like a coffin. Daniel braced Ms. Anders against the chimney, rope looped tight, oxygen hissing soft at her cheek. Myra's voice floated from the rescue boat returning. Here! Here! Red strobes carved the black. But between them and the boat, the current tore with new teeth. The gutter board was gone, ripped clean. Shadow stood at the roof edge, nose high, eyes locked on the water as if calculating. His body said one word, now. Daniel tied the main rope around Shadow's harness. Swim line, he said. The shepherd leapt clean, hit the current like a spear, and fought, paws chopping, chest breaking foam. He reached the boat. Firefighters grabbed the rope, hauled him in, clipped it to their cleat. Line secured, one shouted. Daniel clipped Ms. Anders first. 2 firefighters hauled her across the black torrent like hauling treasure. Mira followed with Emily in her arms, then the teen, then the toddler. Each crossing was a prayer muttered through clenched teeth. Daniel unclipped last, but before stepping off, he caught sight of the blue door. It spun once in the current, chem light still glowing, then drifted toward him like a final command. He reached, caught the knob, and pulled it onto the roof ridge. He lashed it to the rope, absurd but right, because promises matter. Then he crossed. The boat rocked, men shouted, water clawed, but the rope held. Shadow's eyes never left him. He stumbled in, collapsed beside the dog, door thumping wetly against the hull. They had kept everyone vertical. The skiff roared against the current, bow bouncing, engine whining. Debris slapped the hull, branches, toys, even a refrigerator door. Daniel kept one arm braced around Emily and the other on Ms. Anders' oxygen tank. Shadow sat pressed against his thigh, silent but vibrating with watchfulness. Bridge is gone, the coxswain barked over the rain. We're cutting through birch back to high ground. Daniel nodded, eyes on the shore. He knew birches rise. It was the only way out. They surged between houses where porches had become islands, past street signs swallowed to their tips, past cars upended like discarded dice. Mira never let go of Emily's hand. The girl's foil cape fluttered in the storm, silver catching lightning like armor. She kept whispering, he found me. The dog found me, until her voice was steady enough to sound like belief instead of shock. Shadow glanced at her once, then back to the water, tail curled tight but unbroken. At last, the boat scraped gravel. Hands reached down, neighbors, medics, strangers all welded by storm. They pulled each survivor up, one by one. Miss Anders was whisked toward an ambulance, Emily wrapped in blankets, Mira collapsing to her knees beside her daughter. Daniel climbed last, soaked, bruised, rope burns down both arms. Shadow leapt beside him, shaking water like a storm's exclamation. The blue door was dragged ashore too, dumped among sandbags, glowing faintly, absurdly heroic. The river growled once more, then began to retreat, as if satisfied. Hours bled into dawn. Survivors gathered on the firehouse hill, wrapped in blankets, sipping coffee that tasted of smoke and salvation. Floodwaters still hissed below, but here the ground was solid. Daniel sat on a sandbag, Shadow pressed against his leg. Emily and Mira came to him with steaming cups. Emily didn't speak, she simply hugged Shadow around the neck. The shepherd leaned into her, eyes half closed, tail thumping once like a heartbeat. Mira whispered, "You saved her." Daniel shook his head. Shadow did. He looked at the dog, then the door propped against the sandbags. "We just held the rope." The teen, Jay, sat nearby, holding the toddler, his face streaked with grime but eyes alight. Miss Anders lay in the ambulance bay, oxygen mask secure, one hand raised in a trembling wave whenever anyone passed. Someone asked Daniel if he needed a medic. He shook them off. "Later," he said. "Storms come first." By mid-morning, the sun burned through ragged clouds, turning the flood into mirrors of gold and ruin. Helicopters thudded overhead. Neighbors walked streets that no longer resembled maps, pointing, counting, sometimes crying. On the firehouse hill, Mira sat with Emily in her lap, Sparky curled at their feet. Emily's voice was stronger now. "He never let go," she said, stroking Shadow's ears. "Not once." Daniel stood a little apart, watching the waterline recede. He had seen battlefields, but this was different. This was home fighting itself, and refusing to lose. When he turned back, Emily was holding something out, the chem light from the blue door, its glow fading but still alive. "For Shadow," she said. Daniel clipped it to the shepherd's harness. The little green coin swung with every movement, a badge brighter than any metal. Shadow sat tall, eyes fixed on the town below, as if already mapping the next rescue. The storm had split the sky, drowned streets, stolen doors. But the dog had dragged a child back from the water, and in doing so, dragged the town toward hope.